welcome to today's lesson in the art and science of computer technology. Today's lesson will be about Python, lesson 1, basics. What is Python? Python is an interpreted programming language. It is efficient, high-level data, has efficient, high-level data structures. It's object-oriented, dynamic typing, available on Windows, Mac OS, and Unix, and Linux, obviously. Extensible, written in C, and it's simple to use. So interpreted programming language as opposed to compiled programming language means that you can type it right away and it'll just run, whereas a compiled programming language such as C or Java, you would have to compile the source code every single time, and that can take a long time, depending on how big your program is. Efficient high-level data structures. So it's a very high-level language, so you can do a lot of things that you normally wouldn't be able to do with something such as C. It's object-oriented. There will be a whole lesson in that later on, but basically it has to do with data values and functionality. So you can have a class, say a car, and the value could be read, and it could have a function called drive, or a method. Methods and functions are both the same thing, but we'll get into that later on as well. Dynamic typing, so you can create a variable, and rather than having to explicitly say this is going to be an integer, this is going to be a number, this is going to be a character of some kind, you can just write the variable, assign the value, and it'll automatically be typed to whatever the particular value is that you gave it. And obviously this part is simple enough, knowing what operating system you're using. Extensible, written in C, so if you know C, you can do a lot more with Python than you could if you don't know it, but you can still do a whole bunch regardless of if you know C or not, and simply use, as you'll see throughout this course, it's pretty easy to learn how to use Python. Comments. So you'll see these all the time. It'll look something like, where are we at here? This is a comment right here, the little hashtag at the very beginning. So in a lot of other languages, it'll be parentheses, star symbol, and then, or 2 forward slashes, depends on language. But in Python and many other scripting languages such as Bash, the comments are going to be indicated with a little hash mark. So most of you probably already know what a comment is. It's used to clarify code and won't affect the programs. Start with hashtag and continues until the end of the line. Comments may appear at the start of the line or after white space or code. Comments may not appear inside of a string literal, so any kind of string like inside of a parenthesis, inside of quotation marks, either single, double, or triple. Comments may not appear inside of a string literal. The hash mark would just be a hash mark character as opposed to indicating to the interpreter to ignore this section of code. Data types. You have strings, characters enclosed in single or double quotes with a backslash character for escape sequences such as \n to indicate a new line. So that would be 2 new lines. And there's no difference in Python as opposed to languages like C, where there's a char character and there's well, I guess it would be an array or something. But in Python, if it's got letters, it's a string. It doesn't matter if it's 1 letter or 1,000 letters, it's just 1 character, it's a string. Integers, 20, 708, -109, so these are just numbers without decimal points. Floating point number are just what we know as decimal numbers, things like 3.14, 98.98, and 10.10. Complex numbers are things like 3 plus 7j. Alright, so Python has support for that as well. And then a boolean is either true or false. As in C, any non-zero integer value is true. 0 is false, non-empty strings are true. And so anything that would be, what's a string? I don't know, there's a space. Alright, so this would be an empty string because there's no space in between it. This would be a non-empty string, this would be a non-empty string. Pretty much anything except this is a non-empty string, which will be evaluated to true. And empty strings are false. So strings. Use raw strings to not interpret escaped characters. So if you wanted things like this printed, see where it says \s, \n. This, if you did not use the raw string character indicated by this R before the first quotation mark, it would create a new line. Whereas the raw strings is just whatever is written inside of here, that's what's going to be interpreted. Use triple quotes to span multiple lines. Triple quoted strings automatically include end of lines but can be prevented by adding a backslash at the end of the line. Characters are just strings of size 1. Alright, saving and running files. Really simple stuff. Save Python files with the .py extension, e.g. myfile.py for source code files. So things that you usually write, you're going to want to save it with a .py. For compiled stuff, save Python files with .pyc extension, e.g. my compiled file.pyc for compiled binary code files. So this is stuff that your computer is going to be able to read a lot better than pretty much any person is going to. Execute file for terminal by going to the directory your file is saved in and type Python 3, because we're using Python 3 in this tutorial, and where you see my file, you'll just replace that with your own file. So you can have your file. Alright, or whatever you happen to name. If you're using an IDE, check for proper instructions for your given IDE. I don't really use IDEs, so I don't really cover those too much. Idle, the interpreter for Python. For quickly testing code, so if you got something that you want to just check out real fast, see if it works or not, you can just go in that rather than opening a new text editor, saving all that, and running through all the whatever else you're doing, or waiting for IDE times to load, and whatever else you got going on. Alright, so you got the 3 triple arrows are going to be for the primary prompt for the next command, and then you have the ... for the continuation lines for multi-line constructs like if, while, for, kind of loops, and all that kind of stuff. Alright, so additional resources, docs.python.org/3 if you want to read the documentation for Python 3. Really good stuff on there. I recommend maybe not starting with that, but definitely read it at some point early on. And github.com/Python if you want to read the actual source code for Python. Go ahead and study up on this stuff. Also very good read. StackOverflow.com, a Q&A message board kind of thing basically. So you can just ask your questions. Chances are any questions that you're going to have, especially early on, they already have answered. So you can just go search there and you should be able to find everything you need to know. Alright, so here's a simple source code file. Up here you got the hashtag shebang kind of thing. This is going to say where your interpreter that you want to use is located. So you can have multiple interpreters. So there's probably one for Python 2 and whatever else. So you just write out where that is. And that'll have to be on the very first line. And then here we have some comments. I usually kind of like to keep it somewhat templated. So here's these comment for the hashtags. So everything after here is going to be completely ignored by the interpreter. So here I got the project name, I have the file name. I find this is usually pretty helpful just to have the file listed just in case. And if you really want to quickly reference it, it's always at the top of the file. Purpose, course material, notes, anything else I need to write, I have there. But I would just have to be sure to add additional hash marks afterwards, because I can't just, because the notes is up here, so it only goes for the end of the line. So I'll go ahead and end that. Alright, so you can read through all this stuff real fast. Let me just show you what the output's going to be at the moment. We got this, so it'll print out the quote at the top. The way to become rich is to put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket by Andrew Carnegie. Goes against conventional wisdom, but it's pretty smart. So, and then here's the other line that we had printed out, and then here's this one, and then cat dog. So go back to the source code real fast, and here you can see, so here's the original quote. Here is printed 10 plus 98, so it automatically did the math inside of that. I could have just had it print 10 or anything else. We'll cover this later probably, but if you have something like a float, so something like 10.00, it'll automatically convert the other one to a float. So now, see how it has the little decimal point at the end? So yeah, integers get converted to floats when you're adding them together. Print string to 100 plus this. Make sure starting and ending quotes match. So right here I have a single. If I turn that into a double, suddenly it would become an error because of all that stuff. So make sure those match. Make sure there's an ending quote for the starting quote and vice versa. Here I had to put str, this little function right here, which we'll also cover later. So this will convert numbers into strings so that you can add them together, because you can't add numbers and strings together. You can multiply strings by numbers, but you can't add them together. So here we have one commented out. Here's going to raise an error. Go there, and here you can see after this line executed right there, where it says 100, this one was properly converted, this one is not converted. So here, unsupported operand types, so you can't add ints and string together, so that's why I have this little str function up here. So we can go ahead and cancel, comment that back out, and then we just got simple print cat dog. So there's cat dog. You can combine strings like that, but you can't multiply strings by other strings. But if I wanted to print 10 times dog, parentheses off. You close that, and you can see it multiplied it by whatever number I just wrote. So, yeah, that's the lesson for today. Have a great day.